For the second day of Unit 2, we are going to be working on another kind of factoring, and it's called trinomial factoring. That means that you should have three, the prefix tri means three terms in your original problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for numbers that multiply to this 14 and add to this 9. And those numbers are going to help us be able to factor this trinomial. So when I make my list of factors for 14, I know I have 14 and 1 and 7 and 2. When I'm looking at those factors, the ones that work to add to 9 are 7 and 2. So when I go through to factor this, in order to get the x squared that I have right here, I have to do x times x. In order to get the 14 that's right here, I'm going to use the 7 and 2. And to get this 9x that's right here, a positive 9x, it means that I'm going to have a positive 2 and a positive 7 to get that. If you were to take this factored form and you were to FOIL this out, you would get x squared plus 7x plus 2x plus 14, and then combine like terms. It will take you back to the original problem. So this FOIL is your check. It's not part of doing the problem, it's your check. So this is your answer, but you never should get these wrong because you can always check them. So if we continue on now and we'll do the next one, our number is 14 again. So we have 14 and 1 and 7 and 2. And this time I'm going to pick these because those two numbers add to give me the 15. When I set up my parentheses, I have x and x to give me the x squared, and for 14 I need 7 and 2. I'm sorry, I take that back. I don't need 7 and 2. I need 14 and 1. And in this particular case, I have to, out of the 14 and 1, get a negative 15. The only way that that's going to happen is if the 14 is negative and the 1 is negative. In problems like the two that we have just worked on, if you have a plus sign in front of the last number, that means that the signs in your parentheses are the same. The other number, the other sign tells you what they both are. So when I'm looking at this and I realize I have to get a positive 14, I know my signs both have to be the same here and here. And the fact that this is a negative means that both of my signs have to be negative. The same thing works on question number 1. Because this is a positive here, it's what both of my signs have to be. The other positive sign right here is telling me that they both have to be the same. The first one tells me that they're both positive. So if we keep that in mind and we look at the next two questions, you can see on the next two questions, we don't have that positive sign there anymore. Now our last term has a negative on it. Our last number, the numerical term. That means that my signs will be different. That means that there will be one of each. So I start the process the same way. I say, okay, what are my numbers that are going to multiply to give me this 18? So I have 18 and 1, 9 and 2, 6 and 3. And when you are looking for different signs, you are looking for the numbers over here that will subtract to give you a 3 that you have in here. But if I make this a negative 6 and a positive 3, when I add them, it'll give me exactly what I need. So you can look at it that way. That's going to help you fill in your parentheses. I know that I'm using 6 and 3, and if I have to get a negative 3 right here, this has to be negative and this has to be positive. Most of the time, though, I don't do that. What I do is I say, this one here tells me that they're different. This one here tells me which sign, the positive or the negative, goes with the bigger number. So I look at my two numbers. 6 is bigger, it gets the minus. If the signs have to be default, if the signs have to be different, then by default the other one has to be the positive. So when I'm looking at question 22, my numbers are 35 and 1 or 7 and 5. 7 and 5 are going to subtract to give me the 2. I know to get the m squared, I need an m and an m. 7 and 5 multiplies to give me the 35. My signs are different, 1 plus, 1 minus. This tells me what the bigger number gets. So which one is bigger, the 5 or the 7? So the 7 has to get the same sign that you see here. Then by default, the other one gets the other sign. So I'm going to have you flip your paper over to the next page, skip down a little bit, and you're going to see questions 26, 27, and 28. I'm going to have you pause the video to answer questions 26, 27, and 28. When you're done, you can restart the video and check your answers. Here's the answers written down. Please check them. If you need to pause the video to continue checking, you may do so. I'm going to scooch back up to the top part here that we skipped, and we are going to be factoring these trinomials. These are the ones that are a little bit more difficult, and I'm going to do this by not this process that's here. I'm going to do this by another process that's called split the middle. You can use the borrow and pay back one if you want, but I think split the middle is sometimes a little easier. So the reason why these questions are a little bit more challenging is because if you look, there is a number in each of these three in front of the x squared. And because there's a number in front of the x squared and it's not a GCF, we have to have another process to go through in order to do these. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start by first recognizing that this is a trinomial with a leading coefficient other than 1. And I'm going to start by taking that number, the coefficient, the 2, and I'm going to multiply it by the 15. So what I'm looking for are not really numbers that multiply to 15, because what I've done is I've multiplied the 2 times the 15, and now I'm looking for numbers that multiply to give me 30. So if I look at the numbers, I know I have 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10. And I'm going to pick the ones that give me this 13 right here. And the only way I'm going to get 13, if I'm adding, is by doing 3 and 10. So I am actually going to take that middle term, the 13x, and I'm going to split it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it using these numbers that we have right here. So when I split the middle, I'm going to write the question down exactly like it was, 2x squared plus, and instead of writing it as 13x, I'm going to write it as 3x plus 10x. And it's totally okay to do that because 3x plus 10x is exactly the same as 13x. And then this can be where it gets a little confusing sometimes, so you're going to want to make sure you pay attention to this. What we're going to do is we're going to take these 4 terms that we now have, and we're going to split them into 2 parts right down the middle. So right here, I'm going to split them. And I'm going to take this first half and I'm going to factor it using GCF. When I do that, both of those terms can have an x taken out of them, and I'm left with a 2x plus 3. On the next half, 10x plus 15, what I can take out of both of those is a 5, and it's a positive 5. And when I'm done with taking that positive 5 out, I have a 2x plus 3 left over. So this is essentially right now what I have, this part that's written right here. I'm going to have you view that as being 2 parts again. So when I view this as 2 parts, I have this part and this part. If I asked you what the 2 parts had in common, you would say, look, they both have a 2x plus 3. So I'm going to say I've got a 2x plus 3 that I'm taking out of both of them. And what's left in the first term is just the x, and in the second term, it's a positive 5. And that is your answer to this question when it's factored. So I know some teachers teach this by guess and check. This gives you a nice, neat little process to go through, so you're not just guessing and checking and trying to find something that works. This actually gives you a way to make this work. Okay, so let's do number 24. On 24, I noticed that 6 is the leading coefficient, so instead of having numbers that multiply to -2, I'm going to be looking for numbers that multiply to 12. You could write -12 if you want. My options are 12 and 1, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. I want to pick the ones that give me the 1 right here, the middle term. This will give me the 1. Because this sign here is negative, it means one of the numbers that I'm choosing has to be negative. Of my numbers, this tells me that the bigger number has to be positive. So when I split my middle, I'm going to write 6x squared plus the 4x minus the 3x minus 2. So I'm using that same idea that I used before. This tells me the signs are different. This tells me what the bigger number gets. The bigger number is positive, the smaller number is negative. I use that to split the middle. Now I have two parts to this. I have this part, and then I have this part. I'm going to do GCF factoring on the first part. What can I take out of 6x squared and 4x is a 2x. I'm left with 3x plus 2 when I do that. When I get to the second half of the orange equation, what can I take out of both of them is a -1. They both can be divided by a negative, which leaves me 3x plus 2. And then I go back and I say, what do these two things both have in common? They both have a 3x plus 2. I'm going to take that out of both of them. What do I have left? A 2x and a -1. So split the middle is the process that we're using right now. We'll do one more together. On the next one, 10, that's the leading coefficient, is not a GCF, and it doesn't have any, help me have any parts that are GCFs for this trinomial. So I'm going to take that 10 and I'm going to multiply it by the 9. And when I do that multiplying, I end up getting 90. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply to 90. So I have 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 9 and 10, 3 and 30, 6 and 15. And when I am looking for which set I'm going to use, I want to take a look at what my middle term is. My middle term is a 9. So of my choices, the only way I can add or subtract the numbers to get a 9 is going to be 6 and 15. So I'm going to split that middle of 9x up into 6 and 15. This tells me my signs have to be different. This tells me what the bigger number gets. So the 15 is going to be positive and the 6 is going to be negative. I'm going to split the middle. So 10x squared minus 6x plus 15x minus 9. I took the -9x and I split it. I think I just did the signs backwards. Hang on. I'm going to redo that. I put them completely backwards. Hang on. This should be minus and this should be plus. So when I write this down, 10x squared plus 6x minus 15x minus 9. And then I'm going to split these into the first part and the second part. The first part can be factored. I can take out a 2x and be left with 5x plus 3. In the second one, I can take out a -3 and be left with 5x plus 3. So we're doing GCF factoring there. And then when I look at my two parts, this one and this one, I say, what do they both have in common? And what they both have in common is a 5x plus 3. So I'm going to take that out of both of them. What am I left with? A 2x minus 3. And that has that now factored for you. If you look at the bottom of this page, they give you a question number 29 to practice on. So I'm going to ask you to please pause the video and take a minute to do that question on your own, and then come back and check your answer. So please take a minute and check your answer. At this time, we are done with the notes for today. Please use the remaining class time to work on the homework that is assigned for this particular day.